We're doing things a bit differently today, right? How did you feel about doing the meditation that way? Yeah? Would it be okay if we do something like that again every so often? Yeah? I ask because I want to remind you, this is your church. Those of you who are members, you call the shots. So if there's something more that you'd like to see, something that you'd like to see less of, I will do what I can to make that happen. And I should add here that I listen to the collective when it comes to the big stuff. So when y'all come to me with a bunch of little suggestions, it gets kind of dizzying to keep up, okay? So if you have an idea or an opinion, go talk to other members. Get to know each other. Maybe together you can come up with something everyone agrees on so that I can do what I can to make it happen, okay? I just want to make sure that you don't forget that this is your space. It's all here for you. And it's my job to help you achieve what your dream is here, okay? All right, before we get into the talk, I just want to tell you, remember that really cool book I told you about last week? Yeah, Erasmus Joseph Lyon. I now have 10 copies of it in the bookstore. I have 5 paperback and 5 hardcover, so if you want it, come on over and get it, okay? And that was written by a man sitting in our sanctuary right now. Marvin, right there. That is a story that's been sitting in his heart for how long? Yeah, for a long, long time. And he sat down and he wrote it out, and it's a beautiful story, but it's filled with all kinds of wisdom from A Course in Miracles. So you definitely want to check that out. Now, into the talk. I'm going to talk quickly because Carrie, our amazing maestro over here, he needs to be out of here at 11:30. So I'm going to be talking quick. Focus. All right. This is talk 4 on our series about healing guilt and shame. There's only one more until we move into 5 talks on hope, and then we move into trust, and finally surrender. But we've still got a little bit of mess to sort before we get into that expansion into our greatest experiences yet, right? Because we're sorting through that mental chatter that we've been carrying around, that inner narrative that keeps us from believing the truth. And that truth is that we're awesome. Okay? We're looking at that literal list of hits that we have been tracking and adding to throughout all the years of our lives, and which we let our big, insecure, fearful, mean egos beat us up over, right? Yeah, it's a hits list. You know those times that we tell ourselves, I'm too blank to be whatever. I'm not good enough, smart enough, right? I could never do or be, insert thing there, right? Now, I could be more specific, but you all know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Yeah? Have any of you, whether in your youth or more recently, have you ever idealized someone and wished or tried to be more like them? Anybody? Yeah? Okay, well, there's something that we're missing when we do that. We think we're not those things we see in them, but in reality, we possess all of the same attributes. If we didn't, we wouldn't be drawn to them. We're actually looking into a mirror, seeing a reflection of ourselves, but not knowing it, and therefore not embodying it. And that's all thanks to your ego. Okay? Now, have you ever met somebody who has an eidetic memory? Somebody who can recall every intimate detail of everything that they've ever experienced? No? Okay, I know someone like that. And you do too, only you probably haven't realized it yet. The great minds of our world have said that every single experience, every conversation, every moment of every day of your life is recorded and exists somewhere inside of you, and that we can access it if we learn how. Our ego has an eidetic memory. You remember that late night brain diatribe that kicks in when you're trying to sleep? Yeah, that one where you'll remember something horribly embarrassing from your childhood, like when I walked across the school campus with my skirt tucked in my drawers and I didn't even know it until I sat down on the very, very cold seat at my desk. Yes, that pops into my head in the middle of the night. Your ego remembers all of those things, every single moment, every time that somebody told you they were disappointed in you. Every time they said that they wanted you to do something or other, and you didn't do it, or you didn't achieve the goal that was attributed to their expectation. And here's where I'm going to tell you that I'm going to tell your ego that someone else's expectations don't matter. They don't matter one tiny bit in our experience. You can't fail someone else when they placed an expectation on you that you didn't necessarily sign up for. The failure is theirs. I know that's a tough idea to swallow because we believe we failed, but it's true. The people who say you failed them made a choice about what you should do or be when they should have been supporting your goals and your dreams. They made this lovely, precise, detailed cookie cutter, and then they tried to shove you into it and expected you to fit. Right? Any baker will tell you that is not how to make a good cookie. Okay? Nor is it a way to create a healthy life experience. And unfortunately, because I suspect that most of us can identify areas in our memory where we felt that we failed others, it means that we've also led others to believe they've failed us. We humans like to repeat patterns, right? And if that's how we were treated, odds are pretty good that we've repeated that one. And though we surely did have the best intentions, maybe we let someone feel like we were pinning our highest expectations on them. And I'm not saying these things to make you dredge up all of those old failure feelings, and I'm definitely not saying them to make you identify times that you've tried to cram somebody into a cookie cutter that you made, and I don't want you to start feeling guilty about it. I'm just pointing out patterns in the hope that when we see them and we realize that they are just patterns that we've been taught to practice based on our own experience, we can move forward choosing differently. Because that's what it's about, right? Choosing a new and gentler way, a loving way. On page 79 of Mystic Jesus, Marianne Williamson says, one of my favorite quotes is said to be from author George Eliot. It is never too late to be what you might have been. We can give birth to a better version of ourselves. We are healed of the wounds that belong to a self with which we no longer identify. Is this denial? Yes, it is positive denial. It is denying the effects of a lie and affirming the power of a no longer deniable truth. Who you are is unalterable. You're an eternal creation of God. Your true self is an undeletable file. The fact that it's unchosen doesn't mean it's been deleted from the computer. There's no more important effort in life than becoming who we are capable of being. Yet the ego loves to ingratiate itself into the process. It gives us endless excuses for bad behavior while we're working on ourselves. Yes, we need to own our shadow. But we also need to own our light. In the separation lies your weakness, and in your oneness with God lies your strength. Spirit is the loving use of your mind. Salvation, therefore, is a psychological process. The fundamental shift is from a constant and almost pathological obsession with analyzing the darkness to a creative and proactive determination to receive, to own, and to embody the light. And doesn't that sound great? Doesn't that sound powerful? Doesn't that sound like the kind of stuff that transforms life? It is. But how do we do it? Right? Practice makes perfect. You practice over and over again. You choose and choose again. You affirm and affirm until you believe them, and then you keep affirming until you know them to be your truth. That's a conversation that we've had over and over and over again in the different study groups in the bookstore and on campus. People say that there's power in belief. And there is, I agree, absolutely. But have you ever asked someone what time it is, or how much something costs, or some other innocuous question, and you've had them answer, I believe it, and then you find out that they were nowhere near being accurate? Yeah. So yes, belief is important, but knowing is better. So affirm and affirm again until you believe. And once you believe, keep affirming and look for evidence to support your belief until you know. It's up to us to create a new way of doing and being so that those who follow our example don't have to create negative spaces that they fill up with the kind of nonsense that we filled ours up with, right? We are the change, remember? No negative spaces. You dig? I want to share a story with you, maybe a couple of stories. We'll see how much time we have. But this is a story of someone who walked into a place like ours. Someone who'd been taught to hold a well of negative space within them, which they filled up with all kinds of lies which supported their belief that they weren't enough. And it's about how she practiced until she knew. This is the story of Elena. For years, Elena carried the weight of her past like a stone in her heart. She'd been raised in a faith that preached sin and judgment, a faith which her family all believed wholeheartedly, and so she had spent much of her adult life believing she was unworthy. Mistakes, a lifetime's worth of them, became the lens through which she saw herself. One evening, out of curiosity, she attended a lecture at a small New Thought spiritual center. The speaker, a woman named Joy, she spoke with a quiet power that held the room in stillness. You are not broken, Joy said. You are not separate from God, and you never have been. There is nothing you have done or can do that will change the truth of your being. You are divine, whole, and worthy of love. Elena's breath caught. Could it really be that simple? Could all the years of guilt and shame be based on a misunderstanding? After the talk, she approached Joy hesitantly. I hear what you're saying, but I don't know how to let go of all the things I've done. I've spent so long believing I'm beyond redemption. Joy smiled. You don't need redemption. You need to wake up. The guilt you feel is a story, not the truth. The truth is that love is your essence, and nothing can separate you from it. That night, Elena sat alone in her small apartment, and she repeated the affirmation that Joy had given her. I am one with divine love. I release all false beliefs about myself. I am whole. I am free. I am love itself. At first, the words felt hollow, but something in her heart stirred. Over the next few weeks, she practiced catching her negative thoughts and replacing them with truth. One morning, as she stood before her mirror, she met her own gaze and saw something new. Not a sinner or a failure, but a being of light. Tears spilled from her eyes, but for the first time in years, they were not tears of pain. She whispered to her reflection, I am free. And for the first time, she truly knew it. It's a beautiful story, right? Did you see the tools in it? She became vigilant and diligent. She paid attention and caught any negative, limiting, judgmental thoughts about herself and others, and she shifted them into positive, loving truths. And she practiced those affirmations until she realized them as true. But how did she catch those thoughts? And what did she do with them when she caught them? Brené Brown has got the answer to that question, and many others. She has explored these particular areas of human experience that we've been exploring, again, guilt and shame. She's explored them in ways that no one else has. And she's developed insights and tools that no one else probably could. And I love how vulnerable she allows herself to become. In fact, vulnerability is one of the biggest tools that she encourages to move us toward healing, because allowing ourselves to become vulnerable and experience the truth of what we're feeling, and then look at the truth behind what we're feeling while standing in that place of vulnerability, it creates a tremendous opportunity for growth. And somehow the particular book of hers that I'm referencing right now, it got lost on my bookshelves until just last night. And I'm not sure how I overlooked it because I knew what it was about. And last night it stared at me kind of like, hello, I'm right here and I have the answers that you're looking for, lady. And so I picked it up. And this is from page 7 of her book. This particular book is The Gifts of Imperfection. Let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. She says, not too long ago, the principal of a large public elementary school and the president of the school's PTA invited me to speak to a group of parents about the relationship between resilience and boundaries. I was excited about the opportunity. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. The second I walked into the school auditorium, I felt this really strange vibe from the parents in the audience. I was sitting in the front row when the principal introduced me, and this is always very awkward, an awkward experience for me. Someone is running through a list of my accomplishments while I am secretly trying to stave off vomiting and talking myself out of running. Well, this introduction was beyond anything I had ever experienced. The principal was saying things like, you might not like what you're going to hear tonight, but we need to listen for the sake of our children. Dr. Brown is here to transform our school and our lives. She's going to set us straight whether we like it or not. She was talking in this loud, aggressive voice that made her seem, this is a quote here, it made her seem downright pissed off. I felt like I was being introduced for WrestleMania. All we needed were a few strobe lights. In hindsight, I should have walked up to the podium and said, I'm feeling very uncomfortable. I'm excited to be here, but I'm certainly not here to set anyone straight. I also don't want you to think that I'm trying to transform your school in an hour. What's going on? But I didn't. I just started talking in my vulnerable, I'm a researcher, but I'm also a struggling parent kind of way. Well, the die had been cast. These parents were not receptive. Instead, I felt row after row of people glaring at me. One man who was sitting right up front had his arms folded across his chest and his teeth clenched so tightly that the veins in his neck were popping out. Every few minutes, he'd shift in his seat, roll his eyes, and sigh, louder than I've ever heard anyone sigh. It was so bad that the people next to him were visibly mortified by his behavior. They were still inexplicably unhappy with me, but he was making the entire evening unbearable for all of us. As an experienced teacher and group leader, I knew how to handle these situations, and I'm normally comfortable doing so. I was so knocked off my game by this weird experience that I did the very worst thing possible. I tried to impress him. I started talking louder, getting really animated. I quoted scary research statistics that would freak out any parent. I served up my authenticity for a big old helping of, you better listen to me or your kids are going to drop out of 3rd grade and take up hitchhiking, drugs, and running with scissors. Nothing. Nada. I didn't get a head nod or a slight grin or anything. I just managed to freak out the other 250 already pissy parents. It was a disaster. Trying to co-opt or win over someone like that guy is always a mistake because it means trading in your authenticity for approval. You stop believing in your worthiness and start hustling for it. And oh man, was I hustling. The second the talk ended, I grabbed my stuff and walked to my car. As I was pulling out of the parking lot, my face was growing hotter. I felt small. My heart was racing. I tried to push back the instant replay of me acting crazy, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The shame storm was brewing. When shame winds are whipping all around me, it's almost impossible to hold on to any perspective or recall anything good about myself. I went straight into the bad self-talk of, God, I'm such an idiot. Why did I do that? The greatest gift of having done this work is that I can recognize shame when it's happening. First, I know my physical symptoms of shame: the dry mouth, time slowing down, tunnel vision, a hot face, racing heart. I know that playing the painful slow motion reel over and over in my head, that's a warning sign. I also know that the best thing to do when this is happening feels totally counterintuitive. Practice courage and reach out. We have to own our story and share it with someone who has earned the right to hear it. Someone whom we can count on to respond with compassion. We need courage and compassion and connection ASAP. Shame hates it when we reach out and tell our story. It hates having words wrapped around it. It can't survive being shared. Shame loves secrecy. The most dangerous thing to do after a shaming experience is hide or bury our story. When we bury our story, the shame metastasizes. I remember saying out loud, I need to talk to someone right now. Be brave. But here's the tricky part about compassion and connecting. We can't just call anyone. It's not that simple. I have a lot of good friends, but there are only a handful of people whom I can count on to practice compassion when I'm in that dark shame place. If we share our story with the wrong person, they can easily become one more piece of flying debris in an already dangerous storm. We want a solid connection in a situation like this, something akin to a sturdy tree planted in the ground. When we're looking for compassion, we need someone who is deeply rooted, able to bend, and most of all, we need someone who embraces us for our strengths and our struggles. We need to honor our struggle by sharing it with someone who has earned the right to hear it. When we're looking for compassion, it's about connecting with the right person at the right time about the right issue. I called my sister. Ashley was amazing. She listened and responded with total compassion. She had the courage to tap into her own struggles with worthiness so she could genuinely connect to what I was experiencing. Ashley wasn't uprooted and thrown into the storm created by my experience. She just listened and had the courage to share some of her own vulnerabilities with me. I felt totally exposed and completely loved and accepted at the same time. Trust me when I tell you that shame and fear can't tolerate that kind of powerful connection surging between two people. So what do you do when you catch those negative thoughts? What do you do to shift them into positive diligently so that you can heal? You put on your courage pants, you get brave, and you reach out. If you look around, you'll see a room full of potential lifelines who will listen compassionately to help you heal. You don't believe me? Take some time after the service and talk to someone new. Make a friend. I'm going to share one last story with you, one which echoes what I tell you over and over again, week after week, but you may find that this resonates with your own experience. Brian sat in the back of the sanctuary, his hands clenched together. The weight of his past mistakes sat heavy on his chest. Raised in a strict home, he had been taught that failure was something to be ashamed of, a stain on the soul. Despite his best efforts, life had unraveled. A failed marriage, financial ruin, and a sense of unworthiness that kept him awake at night. He'd heard about this church from a friend who said they embraced a philosophy that taught the power of thought and divine intelligence within every person. That they taught what Jesus said in Luke 17:21, nor can ye say, lo, it is here, or lo, it is there, but the kingdom of heaven is within you. They taught what he said in Mark 11:23, truly I tell you, whoever says to this mountain, move from here to there, and believes, does not doubt in his heart, but believes what they say will happen, it will be done for them. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe you have received it and it will be yours. Skeptical but desperate, he attended a Sunday service where the minister spoke about the law of mind. You are not your past, she said. You are a thinker of your thoughts, and your thoughts shape your life. The divine intelligence that created you does not judge you. It only responds to your belief about yourself. Something stirred within Brian. Could it be that the shame he carried was not an eternal sentence, but a belief he'd been holding on to? After the service, he hesitated before approaching the reverend. I want to believe what you said, he admitted, but I feel like I've done too much wrong. She smiled warmly. Guilt is a teacher, not a prison. It shows us where we've been out of alignment with our highest self. But shame is a lie that says you're unworthy of love. The truth is, you are already whole. You just have to see it. That night, Brian sat quietly and tried an affirmation she had given him. I release the past and step into my divine inheritance. I am worthy. I am loved. I am free. It felt awkward at first, but he persisted. Days turned into weeks, and slowly something shifted. He started seeing his mistakes not as proof of his unworthiness, but as stepping stones to greater wisdom. He reached out to those he had hurt, not from a place of self-punishment, but from a genuine desire to make amends and grow. One day while walking in the park, he felt a profound sense of peace, the kind he hadn't known since childhood. The old shame no longer controlled him. He had reclaimed his power not by begging for forgiveness, but by aligning with the truth that had always been within him. He was free. And that is a true story which happened here. He was free. and so are you. The truth within you is love. The mistakes of your past are only opportunities for learning, and you learned. There's no guilt in that, and shame does not have to be your captor anymore. You must be willing to pay attention to your thoughts, choose differently, and when it seems too big to sort out alone, be brave and reach out. You've got this. And if you don't think so, I'll believe in you until you believe in you. I see who you really are. And who you really are and have always been is awesomely, incredibly, perfectly you. Thank you.